explaining everything. In this video, I'm literally going to explain everything. So, physics seems to be true um, based on understanding of um, recession speed of galaxies and so on, and Hubble's constant. Um, the current estimation of the age of the universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. Since a theoretical point in time at which everything was closer together, um, or and so on, um, and and then the Earth is around 4.54 billion years old. Um, why is the Earth spinning towards the east? So when a star forms, there's a protoplanetary disk of gas and dust around it that is non-uniform in density, and so in certain areas that will um, collapse into planets. And so if you think about it, the gas that is nearer to the sun is going faster than that further away. And what happens is that when you have that collapsing into a planet, you have a net angular momentum towards the east if you visualize it. And so the Earth is still spinning towards the east because the universe conserves angular momentum. And so that was the case when the planet formed. And now, if you go to a strip club on the planet Earth, and now you're talking about on the context of the scale of a female human, and then you have a pool, and the female's mass is dispersed from the center of rotation that is the pool, and then she brings her mass towards the pool. What will happen is that because angular momentum is the moment of inertia multiplied by the angular velocity, by bringing her mass towards the center of rotation that is the pool, the moment of inertia is reducing, and therefore the angular velocity must increase, and so she must spin faster. As a universal law, this is also observed in the case of figure skaters and so on, doing their routines from a dispersed mass configuration from the center of rotation that is the ice skate that is on the ground, or touching the ice, um, and bringing that mass towards the center of rotation, the ice skater will spin faster. Now, the universe conserves energy, angular momentum, and charge, and so effectively the entire machine rigorously conserves these quantities because we probably live in some kind of simulation. However, it is unfalsifiable in that it cannot be proven false, but physics is, it seems to be true, and you can parameterize the majority of the universe and understand it. Um, now, um, um, in terms of energy conservation, the sun is a fusion reactor, and so at its core, it's fusing um, um, four hydrogen atoms, and then it's creating two deuterium isotopes, and then that's fusing to create a helium atom. And then the mass of that single helium atom is actually less than the mass of the four hydrogens that went into forming it. And so, and of course, the temperature and pressure conditions at the core of the sun are sufficient for this to take place. And so what happens is, due to that mass defect, energy is released in the form of heat and light. And so all energy forms on the planet Earth are due to the energy that is received from the sun, fundamentally. And so why is there wind? And so if you think about it, the intensity of radiation decays with the inverse square of the distance. And so effectively, what happens is that the equator is hotter because it's closer to the sun, and then the poles are cold because that radiation is decaying in intensity as you get further away, right? And so what happens is that the temperature gradient is automatically hot to cold. And so there's going to be a hot to cold gradient in terms of equator to the poles. And there's also going to be a hot to cold gradient in terms of the land to the sea, because during the days, the land will be heated up faster than the sea, because water has a very high specific heat capacity, or in other words, it takes much heat energy for it to increase in temperature. And so there's going to be fluid flow due to the temperature gradients on the planet Earth, and also the mountains and so on contributing in some fashion. And then similarly as well, the rotation of the planet towards the east, which was explained earlier as conservation of angular momentum. And so all that leads to the fluid flows on the planet Earth. And so humans can then devise a contraption such as a wind turbine, which has blades which are optimally calculated to turn that kinetic energy in the air into rotational energy to turn a generator, which can then generate electricity due to Faraday's law of induction, right? And then that can be stored in some battery, right, to power electronic devices. And so all of this is conserving energy. And then if you assess as well in the context of a tree, let's say a tree is just growing. When it is just growing, it is using the water from the soil to grow and to sprout its first leaves. So once it has sprouted its first leaves and so on, it is starting to undergo photosynthesis. And so what happens in that case is that it is water from the soil plus CO2 from the atmosphere plus sunlight from the sun plus the chlorophyll in the leaves, and then that is creating what? It is creating starch and oxygen gas. And so the starch is used to build the tree in terms of its size, right, and its bark and so on. And then it's also, when the tree is fully sized, that starch is siphoned off to the fruits if it is of the fruit producing variant of tree. And so, and then the oxygen is then released into the atmosphere, right? Then obviously during the nights there's respiration instead of photosynthesis, right? And so in this case, what is happening is that the energy from the sun in light form is hitting those leaves. And then ultimately, if the tree is fruit producing, that is converted into chemical potential energy in the form of the fructose and sucrose in the fruits produced by the tree. When a human picks that fruit up and then distributes it in bulk to some supermarket, and then other humans doing other useful things pick up that fruit, and they have it for breakfast, then their body will convert that chemical potential energy into energy that the body can use to move around and think and function. The entire universe is rigorously conserving energy, every single aspect of it, um, and so on. Now, money is coupled to usefulness. Money is also paid proportional to the difficulty of problems you solve. A person doing a basic job like functioning as a cashier will earn less per hour than someone doing something advanced in software and AI and physics. Um, and so, however, this is still fair because effectively the capitalistic economy, which has been, a successful model, communism has failed so many times, right? Is such that you're paid proportional to the difficulty of problems you solve, and unfortunately, certain people are more competent and talented in areas that are quite difficult and others are not. However, money is not coupled to happiness. There are wealthy people who are not happy. There are Africans who don't come from much who are quite happy with their lives, um, and so on and so forth. And so effectively, um, um, what happens is that you have this thing in which certain people, not because anything benevolent blessed them with these traits, but they for some reason evolved to have proficiency or knack for certain things, like Lionel Messi, who had a knack for soccer and dribbling from quite early, then became manifest in the Messi that we all know and love, who finally won a World Cup in 2022 to cement him as, probably among the best of all time, right? Um, and so what's happening is that nothing benevolent actually blessed Messi with that. In fact, Messi needed hormonal therapy to fix growth hormone defects. Otherwise, he would have been just a bit too small and too weak to actually be professionally successful. And Barcelona knew this when they signed him, right? With the napkin. Um, now, uh, and then you have Elon Musk, and Elon Musk, when he was a kid, he had all these ideas, and none of the other kids had any of these ideas, and so he thought he was crazy, right? Um, But he wasn't crazy. He's just one of those kids with the emergent trait for some reason that is not anything benevolent, blessing him with that of a high IQ with a great imagination. And so he went on to manifest all of that stuff, and bring civilization, to the point where it's at right now, where there are all these epic things going on technologically to manifest his vision of some kind of technological semi-utopia with his ideas, right? Because he wanted to think about what the meaning of life is, what's the point of all of this, um, and then converged on, let's try and make a semi-utopia and then ask the right questions as we get more enlightened, right? Uh, um, so um, um, and so um, um, and then there's Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had all this immense, musical talent with, you know, quite excellent vocals, and then also body coordination with music and the moonwalk and this, that, and the other. And effectively, when you see him perform, he is the music embodied. He has this aura of just it's almost scary because he like just has um, this intrinsic power when he performs, and it's and it just caught on to be him being the king of pop, and then there's just something so special about him, um, and and it's uncanny, and so there's an interview in which he is um, um, describing how he came up with Billie Jean, and he said that he was like, like driving, in the back of a car being chauffeured or something to that effect, or whatever, when he heard in his head for some reason, the question was, where does that come from? He said, from above. Now, Now, Michael was not actually blessed by any benevolent God with the trait for music and musical creativity. This is just an evolved, emergent thing, and God is not actually benevolent or blessing people with certain traits. Um, so, um, and so continuing to explain everything. Um, love. Um, 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 Love is unfortunately not a real meant to be thing. Uh, so um, And so, love is an infatuation, love is an evolutionary tug to procreate, and love is hormonal. So, um, um, and so, um, what happens with females? Females, from the beginning of time, select for men who they feel safe around and who can acquire resources, whether it's back in time as a hunter gatherer who is cunning and can provide, or in the present technological age where someone's a software engineer, or a politician, or somebody who can provide by doing, let's say, work that is more abstract or more technical or more intellectual rather than any physical attributes um, that were in the less advanced times what females would select for. Um, um, and so when they sense a man who has a certain level of confidence, who carries himself well, who is intelligent, who possesses resources and is strong, and they feel safe around that man, hormonally things happen with them, and they may feel safe around that man. Um, and so um, and so they're doing that thing now. In America, the divorce rate is quite high, and that's because this whole thing of love is not actually meant to be a thing, but just evolutionary selection and hormonal infatuation that is not actually meant to be or permanent, and can be fleeting based on circumstance and changes. Um, so, um, and so um, 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 and so that's what's happening there. Um, and then what's happening with the males? The males, um, um, mainly, they are selecting for more physical traits, although there will be some level of mental compatibility and so on. A whole lot of males are more selecting for visual things. Why? Because they're conditioned to. And so, um, and so, why do males like a large ass? Well, a large ass is correlated with um, a better um, waist to hip ratio. In fact, the ideal waist to hip ratio is 0.7. And so if you take some tape measure, wrap it around your waist, and then also wrap it around your hip, divide the waist measurement by the hip measurement. If that's 0.7, you actually have the aesthetic ideal in terms of male perception as to a sexy body proportion. Um, and so usually a nice ass or a big ass is correlated with that idealized waist to hip ratio. And what that actually indicates, evolutionarily speaking, is that those wide hips increase the probability of successful birthing of a child. Um, and so men are conditioned to find that sort of aspect attractive by evolution. Um, and um, breasts, there's a misconception that large breasts may be correlated with increased milk supply. This is not the case. And so large breasts are actually a sign of higher estradiol. Estradiol is a hormone indicating feminine fertility in general. Uh, and so effectively, in summary, um, men are visually conditioned by evolution to 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 find females which show physical traits indicating the presence of high estradiol or fertility. Um, and so when they see that, there are certain hormonal changes and blood flow to the genitalia in the form of erections and so on, and that is conditioned by evolution to be the case. Um, and so unfortunately, none of this stuff is actually meant to be, um, which is why the divorce rate is quite high. And let's examine a funny scenario. Let's say Shakira, right, with sexy hips that don't lie. Um, is Shakira ever going to marry Osas from Idustit, who may have some food security issues? No. She will be with 6'4" handsome Spanish footballer Gerard Piqué, who is rich and a Barcelona centre back with a famous career and shit. No matter how good Mosas's character is and how wholesome of a person he is, or how lovely he is, um, Chucky would never be with him, right? Um, um, and so um, and so um, the whole thing of love being spiritual and beyond, um, you know, selection, female selecting for men with resources with a certain stature or level of influence, or a good strong man with a good place in society. It um, the cases in which there's something more pure than that pure evolutionary selection are exceedingly rare. And so um, so anyway, um, um, yeah. Now, um, this is all absolutely correct. Um, and then, yeah. So, um, continuing to explain everything. Um, um, there is again no benevolent God blessing people with certain traits, putting them in certain positions, or giving them certain aptitudes. It's just all evolution continuing with a combination of factors leading to some person being intelligent or talented musically, or a whole host of other things. And then others having, childhood cancer or this, that, and the other. So, um, yeah. Um, and so, yeah. And so, also theologically, the atheists are wrong. Why is that the case? If you study advanced physics and understand that the universe conserves energy, charge, and angular momentum, and so on, and all this is just rigorously held, then it must be the case that there is some intelligent design. We did not make any of these rules, but we have come to parameterize them and realize that we are subject to all of these rules that we did not create. Therefore, there must be some intelligent design. Um, and so this is the case. And so the correct thing is that there is a God, but that God is not benevolent. That is as near to the truth as you can possibly get. And so, um, continuing to explain everything, prayer. Prayer is a phenomenon of consciousness that evolved in which a human constructs a notion of God in their own brain and then performs goal-oriented prayers, usually with the goal of manifesting something for their life or praying for the prosperity of someone that they know in their family or set of friends. And what this is actually this beneficial evolved phenomenon that actually increases prosperity by having one, a conscience that is somewhat moral, and two, having this goal oriented framework in which effectively you're praying to something, um, and then after praying about it you have confidence and then take actions to manifest what you have prayed for. But when something becomes manifest, it is not actually because anything heard your prayer, but just because you have, as a goal-oriented agent, with a delusion in something benevolent, hearing your prayers, had the confidence to go ahead and take actions to manifest what you have desired and prayed about. Um, and so continuing to explain everything, the physicists typically will be people who do not pray and just make sound plans and sound predictions with the scientific method. And so there will be no praying by the intelligent physicists who are nearer to the truth, which is also true and unfortunate. Continuing to explain everything. Um, um, uh, um, um, the Earth is not overpopulated. The 8 billion humans currently on the planet Earth, that's totally fine. And so when we had the agricultural revolution and all this technology to increase the amount of food that the Earth could produce, right? Um, you know, um, that was fantastic. And so fundamentally, 8 billion humans on the planet Earth is not exceeding the planet Earth's carrying capacity. With our agricultural technology, there is enough to go around. What is actually happening is that in America, 40% of the food that is produced is wasted. And then in Africa, 1 in 5 people is chronically hungry. And so America actually had a history of, of slavery, obviously, especially in the South and so on. And so in this case, there are Africans who were, enslaved and so on. And this is the case as well in other areas, like the Caribbean, right? Now, and then all that's happening is that this is a stupid evolution power game where, let's say, one aspect of civilization or area of civilization evolved under certain favorable conditions for them to become more technologically advanced than the others, and with their superior technology, take advantage of the inferior and less developed uh, um, um, folks living in other regions, which evolved in not as favorable conditions to develop that technological complexity. And so And so the Spaniards and the British, with their ships and with their this, that, and the other, and technology of war, could completely subjugate the inferior intellectual and technological Africans, um, and do the thing, and then pursue the power game, and the money game and the greed game, and do the thing. But fundamentally, what's happening is that there's enough to go around on the planet, and greed and power is the reason why there's so much inequity. Fundamentally, the Earth is not overpopulated. Fundamentally, America wastes 40% of the food that it produces. Fundamentally, 1 in 5 Africans is chronically hungry. Um, so anyway, um, so this is all quite nutty and all quite correct. So I'm just going. This is just like a big Thanos upload. But anyway, so anyway, uh, yeah. Um, so um, um, so let's see. Um, um, uh, um, let's see. Um, yeah, and so in along the line of us not being overpopulated, what is also true is that um, um, we are um, we are we are um, below replacement in terms of um, um, birth rate. And so, what is replacement? It's when a couple consisting of two humans produces two more humans, right? And so, in many countries and areas, we are below replacement. And so, although the population will continue to increase for a while, what this looks like when you have below replacement is that you have an aging population with less young folk, and the economy starts getting wonky because there's less young folk. And then over time, you eventually do get population collapse. Um, and so the truth is that we're not overpopulated. Um, with birth rates being below replacement in a lot of countries, the population will continue to increase, and then um, the population will be aging with less young folk to give vigor to the economy, and then eventually you get, after increasing population collapse, um, um, and so this is also explaining everything. Um, yeah, um, yeah. So um, um, so and so just to go over the mathematics of this, if you have a bunch of countries in which the birth rate is below replacement, or a couple is having less than 2 children, again, you have population increasing for a while, but then that population getting, skewed towards older, the economy being not as good because there's not as many young folk coming in to give it vigor. And then over time, after that increase in population with continuing low replacement rate, you get population collapse. Um, and so this is also explaining everything, which is precisely why, if you are able and stable, um, most couples should aim for having 2 children. So take it from me. Um, and then we're not overpopulated, and it's just actually just this stupid power and greed game why things are so fucked up, and there's so much inequity. Um, so anyway, um, continuing to explain everything. Um, yeah. Um, um, Technology is continuing to evolve, um, and so um, each generation has been able to build on top of the discoveries and inventions of all the previous ones. And so I've already uploaded a video, obviously, of Tesla FSD 12.5 with no interventions or disengagements from park to a destination. And then this is just because the premise from the start of a mechanical imitation of the biological neural net that is the brain, in the form of a full self-driving computer, which is silicon based, and then cameras instead of eyes. If that neural network is sufficiently trained, it could actually be safer than human because of mechanical precision. Um, and so that is actually currently the case, and Tesla FSD crash probability is lower than human crash probability. Um, so, but still, what will happen, because I'm explaining everything, is that any crashes due to FSD will be blown up in proportion to the more probable human crashes. So, so, um, so, um, yeah. So anyway, um, yeah, um, um, yeah. In terms of politics, um, yes, the truth is that in America, the majority of mainstream media has had a somewhat democratic narrative. That is on irrefutable, really. Um, and so and so, there are true things such as when Donald Trump was president, there were no new wars. When Biden took over, there were two new wars. Donald Trump signed a bunch of peace treaties and shook Kim Jong Un's hand and so on, and and this, that, and the other. And frankly, as well, there's the immigration situation under Biden and Kamala has been quite atrocious. And if you don't think it's real, there's a video of Elon going to the border and then literally seeing the stream of people coming over. A lot of them with a criminal thing with tattoos, which is actually because they've killed people in their country and shit. Um, and that's all actually very much so real. And they've just had this completely liberal thing um, going on there. So, and then I'm saying this as well, as an immigrant originally from Jamaica, who who became a citizen the right way and is a good citizen with a bachelor's degree who got into grad school. So I got N550 motherfuckers. So uh, yeah. So and so America should be taking in people who are immigrants who are intelligent, who want to contribute to the country. And so I'm an immigrant from Jamaica who um, has a bachelor's degree, got into grad school, and is a citizen with an N550, and immigrated and became a citizen the right way, right? Um, so, just saying. Um, so anyway, um, or migrated, not immigrated. Anyway, um, so, uh, um, so, um, yeah. Now life is hard, and so there's Mexicans who have been like crying every night, but at the border, not getting over, not having, getting what they want and coming to America and trying to build here, and then dying, having spent the last few nights of their lives crying themselves to sleep, on the Mexican border. And sure, that does happen. Life is hard, and unfortunately, to preserve the prosperity of a country, you cannot let everyone in, and that is just a fact. So, and so I'm sorry for y'all hyper liberals. The world has some very hard truths. So, um, so anyway, um, yeah. So, yeah. Um, Now, Kamala's mention of pricing restrictions in terms of groceries and so on. We've done some thought about that, this, that, and the other, projecting into that, and then this would not be a good thing. In general, it wouldn't be a good thing. There's just a whole lot of things that end up going wrong when you do grocery pricing restrictions. And I think Kamala herself knows that because she's educated in economics. But then she may be putting that message out to actually influence people who are not as educated as her, which is even more fucked up. So, so anyway, continuing to explain everything. Because I'm a fucking genius and I fucking hate everything. Um, um, yeah. Donald Trump had an interview with Elon. Um, and in that interview, when he was talking about the incident with the shooter, Donald Trump said that, the whole situation of him looking to the right at the last moment and the bullet only going through his ear and not his ear and not going through his brain, or killing him, right, was an act of God. Now, this is the case even in the case of Donald Trump, in which you have confirmation bias. What is confirmation bias? It's when something lucky or improbable happens, and then you attribute that to some act of God or something benevolent looking out for you. Um, and so Donald Trump had an instance of confirmation bias during the Elon Musk interview, calling that lucky thing of him looking to the right at the last minute, such that the bullet went through his ear and not his head, in an act of God, which is human confirmation bias, which is effectively, again, describing something that is ultimately a lucky coincidence and improbable, and attributing that to some benevolent God or some God looking out for you, and calling it an act of God. And so Trump is, like many other humans, a human who has some level of confirmation bias in relation to God. Um, so, so anyway, um, confirmation bias, not an act of God, confirmation bias. Um, Now Elon endorsed Trump. I understand as well, and I had been leaning towards Trump before the endorsement of Trump. Um, um, and that's just because, assessing certain things, I think honestly Trump would just have a bit more of a backbone here. So, and then, that I think Kamala's just a bit too liberal. And then, she was vice president, and she says, that she's gonna like fix the border and this, that, and the other. Well, she was vice president for 4 years, so yeah. So hey, yeah, um, yeah, um, so yeah. And then there are people who can't stand Donald Trump now. Um, um, a whole lot of folks, like Donald Trump, and him, doing Trump Tower in New York and this, that, and the other. But they turned on him when Trump decided to run Republican instead of Democrat, which is all you need to know about the nature of politics. So. Hey man, anyway, I'm fucking done. This is all explaining everything. Deus Ex Machina out.